Coming up. Yes, I know we looked at Priti Patel last week, but she's making headlines again this week. First of all, her £54 million gift to France in a futile, pointless and dog-whistle racist attempt to stop what is a relatively small number of brown and black people crossing the channel. Plus, her plans to jail journalists who write stories embarrassing the government. And also, the Police Federation of England and Wales has just announced that it no longer has confidence in the current Home Secretary. Yes, okay, it might be more to do with remuneration than Patel's police crime sentencing and courts bill, but when the Police Federation says there is enormous anger within policing and that the government treats them with contempt, I think that's worth a closer look. So keep watching. If you enjoy these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe and click the bell to get notified of new releases every Wednesday and Saturday. This isn't the first video we've done about Priti Patel, and as the pressure yet again builds on Boris Johnson to dismiss her, let's just very quickly run through a brief summary of previous offences that have seen her the subject of previous Truth to Power videos. She was fired by ex-Prime Minister Theresa May for holding a series of undisclosed meetings with Israeli government officials, including Benjamin Netanyahu, without permission and then lying about it. She visited an Israeli military field hospital in the occupied Golan Heights, which represents a breach of protocol as Britain doesn't recognise Israel's annexation of the territory. She subsequently proposed that her department give cash to the Israeli army for field hospitals there. Theresa May ordered her back from a visit to Uganda in order to fire her for what basically amounts to treasonous offences, colluding with a foreign government, and her first serious breaches of the Ministerial Code. Fast forward a couple of years and she was back in the cabinet in the Boris Johnson cabal. Not too long after that, she was found by an independent inquiry to have bullied staff in all three of the government departments in which she had worked, including a physical assault, throwing a book at somebody, literally. Further, serious breaches of the Ministerial Code, which Boris Johnson of course rejected out of hand, saying he was sticking by the Pritster, as he calls her. This prompted the resignation of the senior civil service advisor to Johnson on matters relating to the Ministerial Code, and also, by the way, led to £370,000 of taxpayers' money being paid to another senior civil servant, Philip Rutnam, for constructive dismissal, a cost directly incurred by Patel's bullying behaviour as a boss. Yet us taxpayers foot the bill while she remains in office. More recently, she proposed starving the Irish as a Brexit negotiation tactic, completely tone deaf to the troubled history between Ireland and Britain. Okay, it's only words you might think, but Patel's words can lead to hatred and violence, like when she branded lawyers defending asylum seekers as do-gooders and lefty activist lawyers, when basically they're just lawyers just doing their job. But Patel's words incited death threats against some of them, with they and their families needing police protection because of her. Also, who can forget the arrogant and smug gloating the very day when our rights to freedom of movement across the EU were taken away from us? She trashed my personal plans to retire to Cyprus, completely changing my life, but she was gleeful about this loss of our freedoms. I mean, what's wrong with the woman? I'll also quickly mention her involvement in funneling multi-million PPE contracts to an associate, Samir Jassal, via Matt Hancock, and then more recently still, when she lost 400,000 criminal records and still has no idea where they are, meaning that society today is less safe because of her incompetence, with criminals being left unpunished for convictions. She was also responsible for the overreach and brutality by the Met Police at the Sarah Everard Vigil, as a precursor to her introducing the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill, which takes away fundamental rights to public protests that create any noise or inconvenience to bystanders, whatever that means. She was also accused of misleading Parliament about the bill. Patel said she had worked closely with the Police Federation, which represents the interests of 130,000 officers, when drafting the legislative proposal. But a recent Freedom of Information request showed that the Federation stated quite clearly that they were not consulted on the legislation and did not provide any submissions. So she lied. One specific victim of Patel's bill is Katie McGorran, a 21-year-old student in Bristol who woke up one morning in her own bedroom to find herself being handcuffed while half-dressed by a group of male police officers after attending a protest against the bill. A really traumatic experience that led to severe distress and repeated panic attacks. She had done nothing illegal and had no criminal record. Well, as far as we know, perhaps hers were among the 400,000 lost by Patel. Avon and Somerset police subsequently issued a grudging apology and admits it was an unacceptable situation and looked a little bit like it was revenge policing because of the number of officers injured on the day of the protest. But not by Katie McGorran. She did nothing wrong. She's just one victim of Priti Patel's nasty attack on democratic rights to protest. I hold Patel personally responsible for the traumatic events suffered by her and probably hundreds of others opposing Patel's quite frightening legislation. Priti Patel seems to just get off on taking away our rights and freedoms, as well as those of journalists. Her plans to reform the Official Secrets Act will treat journalists who handle leaked government documents in exactly the same way as foreign spies, according to, wait for this, the Daily Mail. Her department's plans suggest a maximum penalty for handling leaked documents of 14 years in jail. Priti Patel's Britain bears an uncanny resemblance to Viktor Orban's Hungary, banning protests, pushing through voter suppression, vilifying asylum seekers, and now imprisoning journalists. On asylum seekers, by the way, her new immigration bill seeks to fix Britain's broken asylum system, not by properly funding it so it can actually process legal applications for asylum, but by criminalising not just asylum seekers, but the Royal National Lifeboat Institution saving lives at sea. And she's breaking international laws and obligations in the process. Asylum seeking is not the same as migration. The vast majority of asylum seekers coming to this country are eventually accepted as genuine. That appears to be why she wants to stop them. But for all the focus on migrants from Patel and the right-wing press, there's really not that many of them coming. Less than 8,500 last year. Just to put the number in perspective, if every asylum seeker was a qualified lorry driver, it would take 10 years to make up for the current shortfall in lorry drivers in this country. And there's more than a tinge of racism to this. It's clearly dog whistle politics of a kind that Priti Patel revels in, like her defence of football fans booing the England team taking the knee, said by England footballer Tyrone Mings to have stoked the racist abuse suffered by the black England penalty takers in the European Championship final. Patel is doing her best to make it embarrassing to be British right now. And now the Police Federation have had enough too. The only people left in her corner are Boris Johnson, the National Front, the English Defence League, Union Jack flag manufacturers and historic statues. Along with the 400,000 lost criminal records, we now have a police force that has absolutely no faith in the minister to whom they're responsible. Criminals have never had it so good.